Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast may contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews, be sure to check out our show on YouTube. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show.
Cubby Leader calling Raven. Cubby Leader calling Raven. Confirmed. This is Joe, a man who's the best, with guns, with knives, with his bare hands. My partner is Dave, who can eat things that would make a billy goat puke. And this is episode number 134. And in this episode, D23 happened this week, bringing us a good little handful of Star Wars news. The Mandalorian gets a full trailer, as does Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. And then, you think it's over? Nothing is over. Reviews Without Remorse draws First Blood, as we review the first in the Rambo franchise, First Blood. What's up, partner?
Not much, my man. Hope you're having a great vacation. That is a hell of an intro, by the way. Nice one.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's a movie I've been looking forward to talking about for a long time, so it needed a respectable intro, so thank you. And
Indeed.
My vacation is going terrific. It's nice and relaxing, and frankly, that's all I can ask for.
That's all any of us can ask for.
There
So
you
yes,
go.
this weekend was D23, the annual Disney convention that they have every year. And they announced a bunch of Marvel shows, but honestly, there's no trailers for them yet. But there are trailers for these two Star Wars ones, and I'm kind of curious to see how you feel about them.
Same here. It should be, let's get to it.
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession. Don't you agree?
Okay, I'm excited. I like the look of The Mandalorian. I like the feel of it. I like how it expands the universe without kind of overcrowding it. I loved the scene where he grabbed the guy with the rope thing, pulled him through a hatchway, and then closed it and snipped him in half. Loved that.
Ouch.
Seriously. I mean, even like the first shot. The first shot is just like a bunch of stormtrooper helmets on pikes, and it's like, well, they're setting a tone for you.
Yeah. Listen, I am with you 110%. I am very much looking forward to this. It looks pretty damn awesome, and frankly, if it's half as good as it looks, I mean, I think it's going to be tremendous. And honestly, it's kind of reminding me of Rogue One a little bit, which I was a huge fan of. And again, kind of Star Wars for grown-ups, I think. So yeah, I'm there. Like I said, if this thing is half as good as it looks, I think we're in for something pretty special here.
Indeed. It stars Pedro Pascal. Now, you wouldn't know him, but one of his biggest claims to fame was in Game of Thrones, but you would know him in The Kingsman 2. He was the cowboy with kind of the semi-sort of lightsaber rope
Lassos,
that he used.
yes.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Very
that
cool.
was him. Now, honestly, so far they haven't shown him without his helmet, but considering what we talked about with Dark Knight last week and everything like that, and Dark Knight Rises with Bane and with Joker, I'm curious if they're going to try to find excuses to have him take the helmet off, or if they're going to have the guts to just have him keep the helmet on the entire time.
That would be interesting. It would be interesting. I hear you in terms of what we said about that. Yeah, I wonder if that'll. Okay, I'm curious. Like I said, it's definitely got my attention.
It does indeed. And honestly, at $5.99 a month, Disney Plus is like a steal.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe I'll tell you what. Maybe they're wising up, because I think. We've talked about it before, but it seems to be the way of the future that we're going to have to buy kind of every single solitary channel we want. So hopefully they'll wise up and it won't make it too crazy expensive.
Yeah, hopefully not. Well, the TV show premieres Tuesday, November the 12th, the day after my son's birthday. So I'm looking forward to it. Thumbs up from me so far. Good job, Jon Favreau.
There you go. And happy birthday, Liam.
We've passed on all we know. A 1,000 generations live in you now. But this is your fight.
You know what the funny part is? I was okay with this new trailer for The Rise of Skywalker. Just okay with it. Right up until the point where at the end they do the big shocking, oh, Rey's gone to the dark side. Yeah, you should have done that in the last movie, you jerks.
Yes. What to say about this trailer? I think, it's funny because the last little teaser wasn't great. It was fine. And I watched that and I was like, okay, all right, they're going to beat us over the head with fan service to try to win us back for one last hurrah. Fine, that's fine.
Well, they doubled down on beating you with the fan service. Half the frickin' trailer is scenes from the previous movies.
Yes, exactly. And you know what? Honestly, this time around, because it was just so pathetically blatant, I was like, you know what? Nope. Could care less. I could genuinely care less this time. I mean, honestly, everything in this trailer, first of all, like you said, it was 2/3 just nothing but clips of older, better films, which made me just sort of realize just how awful these have been, and how I just don't care about any of these characters, and I could care less. I could totally care less at this point. It's kind of dead to me now, and I hate to say that, but it's the truth. I could if we didn't even bother with this one, I wouldn't even care. Like I would literally, if we weren't going to review this, I'd wait till it was on video. And I don't think I've ever not seen a Star Wars in the theater. But this would be the one. And honestly, it's not even just because the last one was so terrible, although that is so true that once I was done with the last one, I was just so turned off by Star Wars. And again, the last one left off with nothing really to look forward to. They burned all the bridges. They pissed all over everything that came before it. So, but even that, it's not even that anymore. This trailer just looked awful. And like you said, seriously, they do a shot where Rey has the red lightsabers. Like, are you serious? Are you really kidding? Like, do you really think for 2 seconds anybody's going to look at that and go, oh, wow, Rey's going to turn to the dark side? Do you think? No, come on. You've already destroyed that character by making her so perfect and so flawless. Nobody thinks that's going to happen in this. Not one person. Even if they've never seen one of these before. Whatever. Just it looks just like hot garbage. And by the way, what's with C-3PO with red eyes? Like, is this just getting to be like just a gag now? Like let's see what we can do with C-3PO so people have to buy different action figures? Come on.
The funny part is some people are theorizing, that's where the spirit of Palpatine's been hiding, inside C-3PO.
Good Lord, come on. Ugh.
You know what's worse? If that turns out to be right, I'm going to be triply disappointed. I mean, I'm already disappointed by this trailer, and it's little bait and switch or whatever the hell it is it's trying to do. It's like, you had the perfect opportunity to flip the game, to subvert expectations, to coin a phrase, by taking In The Last Jedi, reversing things, make Rey the bad guy, and bring Ben back to the light side, and then have the series go on that way. That would have been a great way to frickin' subvert expectations. But now you're trying to sneak that in here? They kind of sort of, hinted that there was a darkness to Rey a little bit in Force Awakens. So obviously J.J. Abrams wanted it to go this way. Okay? But, Rian Johnson pissed all over that, and now he's trying to, bring it all back together into some kind of coherence. This is a hot mess. This is worse than a hot mess.
Mm. I mean, it's frankly, I mean, I can't say any better than you just said it. They've painted themselves into an incredibly piss poor corner. By the way, I've heard things recently about why some of these things might have happened.
Oh,
Well,
please enlighten me.
well, here's the thing, and I didn't really kind of put two and two together. Basically, George Lucas retained some of the rights to some of the merchandising. When he sold Star Wars, he didn't sell it 100%. He did keep a little bit of the merchandising rights, meaning anything that was anything that was a George Lucas creation, Darth Vader, Yoda, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, etc. He would have still gotten some of the merchandising profits.
Okay.
So the new people at Lucasfilm said, you know what? If that's the case, let's prop up our new characters, lessen the impact of the older characters, so that way we don't have to pay off George Lucas. We can just keep more of the merchandising money. And you know what? I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that at all. And I think that actually explains why every classic character keeps getting pissed all over in favor of these new, wonderful, perfect characters. And you know what? It's just another reason I don't like where this franchise has gone. I just don't like it, and I just could care less. It's kind of dead to me now.
Oh man, I hope that's not true because that's just some petty bullshit there.
You know what? This is creativity by corporation. And sometimes it works, sometimes it don't, and here it don't.
John Rambo, a drifter, just passing through their town.
Morning! Headed north or south?
North.
Now jump in. I'll make sure you're heading the right direction, huh?
You got someplace I can eat around here?
There's a diner about 30 miles up the highway.
Is there any law against me getting something here?
Yeah, me.
A veteran Green Beret is forced by a cruel sheriff and his deputies to flee into the mountains and wage an escalating one-man war against his pursuers. Written by Michael Cozell, William Sackheim, and Sylvester Stallone. Based on the novel written by David Morrell. Directed by Ted Kotcheff. First Blood.
I don't want you to cut your own throat.
You know, except for the extreme stereotyping of the small town cops, here we are going on 36 years later. I feel the movie holds up. I feel the movie still holds up, and I had a hell of a time watching it. I enjoyed every moment of it, and I recommend it for people to watch. I'm going to start right out of the gate, and say I liked this movie, I had fun with this movie, you should watch it.
I am with you there. In fact, I'll even do you one better. I think it's one of the... it's my personal bias is going to shine through here, but I think this movie is phenomenal. I think this movie is just absolutely incredible. Anybody who knows me knows that I've absolutely loved this franchise, and it's a weird one. You know, it's a weird franchise with ups and downs and all kinds of little twists and turns. But this film here is absolutely spectacular. And, you know, I sort of feel like it's kind of a cliche at this point when people sort of talk about this film to sort of, put the big clarification out there. Don't let what you know about the other Rambos taint what your experience is with this film. It is a totally original, unique thing, and it was kind of, again, this is sort of long before you had, Rambo sort of turned into just an action movie franchise. Having said that, again, this movie is absolutely tremendous, and I kind of dare anybody to tell me otherwise. I think this is it's a lower stakes film than what sort of came later, but yeah, this one is just aces. I think this is an incredible film. I love watching it. I don't get tired of it. And honestly, it's a movie that reminds me of autumn. Like every fall, I kind of want it. Like when it starts to get cool outside again, it makes me want to bust out First Blood and watch it again.
Filming location for this movie is actually 3 hours north of me, in a town called Hope in British Columbia in Canada.
Yep.
And after watching this movie, I was like, man, I didn't realize I could drive there. I should just drive up there and take a look around. Supposedly, the town still relatively has its shape. They took over the town to film this movie. But a little background story about me aside, let's talk about this movie. What you have here is honestly a very simple story, and yet such a human story.
Yes.
There was a time, it's sad to even think about this now, but there was a time when Vietnam vets were considered like third-class citizens. Today's modern things on soldiers, about soldiers coming back from the war and being homeless and stuff like that, you kind of hear about that, a decent amount now. But in '82, it was like almost accepted that, Vietnam vets, screw those guys, the baby killers and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. It was terrible, frankly. Okay, fine. There were atrocities. I'm not going to deny that some, soldiers went, a little too far. That's fine. But as a whole, you can't treat them the way that these guys were treated. And which was the basis of the story that David Morrell came up with, because he also kind of felt like, well, this is, kind of wrong. And God, what happens if you push around like a guy with tremendous PTSD that hasn't been treated? And that's really what this story is. And it's amazing to watch through the eyes of Stallone. And, at the time, I didn't take Stallone seriously as an actor. He was Rocky, what was he? But watching it again this time, I really am disappointed in myself for how little credit I give Stallone as an actor. He has a lot of subtlety and nuance in his characterization of Rambo in this movie. Much, it goes into bombast in the later films, but there is, it's amazing how he holds himself together and yet still generates fear in his eyes. Like when they're about to shave him, when in the scene after he's been showered and everything like that, and they're about to shave him, that is the first time that I can think of that I actually saw Stallone show fear in his eyes, like terror. Like he was absolutely terrified. So when he does lose it, it's like you understand it. I really apologize, Mr. Stallone. I really took you for granted. And this movie reminded me that you do have... I mean, when we saw the first Rocky, I think I said something similar. Because I had forgotten just, that Stallone... Because Stallone became such almost a caricature of himself that you sometimes forget that the guy can act. And this is, again, a reminder that Stallone really... he should maybe try some more drama out for size. I understand that doing... And you know what? The Creed should have shown me that as well, you would think. But, here we are. I was thinking back to 1980s over-the-top Stallone. This is not an over-the-top movie. There's subtlety and depth. They don't spell everything out to you. Hell, he's got this, amazing knife, okay? This little Swiss Army blade of a knife that has a little hollow hilt and everything like that holds matches and it holds fishing line and stuff like that. They never explain the knife. They let the visuals tell the story of the knife. I loved that. I loved that and kept it realistic. Like, you never actually see the compass that's on the other side of the screw top of the thing. But the way that they played it out is just perfectly done that you get it.
Yeah.
They didn't actually have to show the compass pointing north or anything like that. You just got what it was. I love when they do things like that visually. And this movie is chock full of them. In fact, there's so little dialogue from John Rambo that at the end, when he has his big speech, it's almost shocking. He's like, oh, shoot, I forgot he can talk.
Yeah, very true. It's funny, those survival knives, I mean, they were like kind of a hot commodity for a while. And this is kind of going back to my Rambo fascination in the 80s. But I remember the name of the company that made them, that made the original one. I could tell you they also made the knives for the second one and the whole bit. And I could even tell you how it evolved. And in fact, I was actually just this past weekend at a flea market, and I saw one. I wasn't sure if it was the exact one, but it was spot on, similar. And I was very tempted because when I was a kid, I really wanted one, but I wanted one of the real ones. But yes, you're speaking to the attention to detail, and that says a lot. And yes, listen, this guy, he always was a full-blown actor. He could act. It wasn't until sort of the mid-'80s that he sort of became... The problem with Stallone is that he became a franchise machine. You know, he was essentially making... Once he started making blockbusters, he sort of felt compelled to make nothing but. And that's kind of where he kind of goes off the rails. And he's always sort of looking for the next big thing. And yeah, that's where you start to get these big hit and miss things. But when he was just flat out doing his craft, the guy could act. He really could. And you're absolutely right. The fact that when he doesn't, for a film where he doesn't say much throughout the whole thing, his body language communicates everything. And it is absolutely tremendous in that respect.
Indeed. There is really... I feel like there's so much and so little. It's a quick film. It is an hour and a half long.
Yes.
It is really, really fast. Like, I was like, blink and you miss it. It was over. And yet, it's very packed, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot that happens from point A to point B. You know, you see him coming into town. He's visiting one of his friends. It turns out he died from Agent Orange, so the mother says. He just wants to go into town and get a meal. Sheriff says, GTFO. And he's like, well, screw this. Tries to go back in town, gets arrested, gets reminded of his torture because the Galt guy is like, a Stephen King-esque bully, I guess, is the best way to look at it. Yeah. I'm sorry, okay? He was, like, way over the top. Like,
well, you know what's funny? Yes and no. I sort of feel like, honestly... when I rewatch that movie, sometimes I sort of forget. There is kind of a little moment in the beginning where he seems like he's just sort of doing his job, and then you see Rambo sort of get under his skin. So even that, I will still sort of take it like a little issue. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, he is the most over the top of all of them, I suppose. But even then, it wasn't like he was like this mustache twisting villain kind of guy. They do sort of show you, like, Rambo's getting under his skin. They're starting to butt heads, and it just sort of escalates, whatever. Basically, what I'm saying is, even though he is probably, like you said, the more over the top of the bunch, he's not a paper-thin character either.
No, yeah, you're very right about that. There is elements of him that do ring true. I'm just mainly talking about, when he just starts taking pot shots at them off the side of the mountain. I kind of felt like that was a little over the top, but not in a bad way. I don't think it was. It didn't detract from the movie for me. I just kind of felt like and in fact, at the time, that was kind of an almost accepted quote unquote stereotype. The small town sheriffs are corrupt, or so on and so forth, but they didn't even go there really. They didn't go to the that he's corrupt. He's just
an asshole.
Paranoid? An asshole, paranoid, The weird thing is and this is a tribute probably to the actor more than anything else. Dennehy, I wasn't rooting for him as the quote unquote, antagonist, but he played it so well and so naturally that it was almost like you could kind of sort of see where he's coming from. Like, it's a small town, you don't want too much riffraff. You don't want people to get the idea that there's riffraff in there and everything like that. And it's a credit to him as an actor that he was able to take what could have been a pretty two-dimensional villain and breathe some life into it. I especially liked his interactions between him and Richard Crenna after they thought that Rambo was dead.
Yes.
The two of them working off each other was beautiful stuff. In fact, I almost miss it in the rest of the series because of that. And I love Richard Crenna, don't get me wrong, but there was something about the old war horses because the Teasel character, if you had read the novel, he was a Korean War veteran.
Yes.
So he also had training. They implied it in the movie with some of the stuff in his office, but they didn't ever really expand upon it.
And props to you for reading the book. I didn't know you read the book.
Oh God, dude! Back in like '85 or '86.
Very good. Yes. That is absolutely true. In fact, there was a lot more in the book that part of the reason why they were sort of butting heads and had different personalities. Right. One was a Korean War vet. One was a Vietnam War vet. Different wars, different style people. And yes, that did play out a little bit in the book.
And I almost missed that. Also, Rambo was a Native American in the book. But
I think they kind of. Well, I don't know if he was a complete Native American in the book.
He was like partial. You know,
I think they actually even mentioned that in the second one. To be honest with you, I think they do sort of. If I remember correctly, and again, I'm going way back to my memory from the mid '80s reading the books. I think in the second film they actually do say that he was part German, part Native American, and some other stuff possibly. But I thought they did sort of mention that.
You know what? Well, as the series goes, we'll find out because you may be right about that. The other huge difference is that in the books he died.
Yes, all
in
of
the first book.
Yes, yeah. All of the stakes, frankly, were a lot higher because not only does put it this. In the film, the whole part when he's out in the woods and he sets up the booby traps and he basically takes out all of the deputies with the sheriff, all of that is really amped up in the book, and he did kill. I think he killed all of them except for Teasel, I think, if I remember right. And again, speaking strictly about story structure, you really can't redeem from that. So, yes, Rambo went way too far, so the only logical conclusion is that he has killed himself. In the film, thankfully, yes, they toned it down a lot where he just injured them, and he says, I could have killed them all, and I didn't, etc.
And then he says the big line, one of my favorite lines, and when the first time I heard it, I was like, oh my God, that's awesome.
Don't push it. Don't push it, I'll give you a war you won't believe. Let it go. Let it go.
Yes, it is so good, right. But again, like Rambo didn't get carried away. One deputy is killed, and that raises the stakes a hell of a lot. But again, it allows for some redemption at the end, where you don't want to see Rambo killed. And you probably also know that they did film a version. There's like an alternate ending floating around where Rambo is shot. Do you know this?
I did not realize there was. I know that originally there was like a 3-hour cut of the movie. I did not realize that there was an ending where he actually did get shot.
Oh yes. There is. It is a little more akin to the book, if I remember right, because I do believe in the novel he does die at the hands of Troutman. This one, I can't remember if it's exactly the same or if they just sort of play on it a little bit, but basically, when Troutman confronts Rambo, again, after he's shot up Teasel, he doesn't finish him off, Troutman shows up, there's a confrontation there, and Rambo does a lot of the monologue, and then he just says something to the effect of, I need you to put me down, or something like that. Rambo grabs the gun from Troutman's holster, points it at himself, and there's some talking back and forth, and then Rambo literally just like grabs the trigger, pulls it, and essentially shoots himself. So, yeah, and it's out there. In fact, when you watch the fourth Rambo, they do this kind of montage, this sort of dream sequence. You'll see it in there. They actually...
Really?
Yes, it's in there. I mean, you could YouTube it tomorrow, and you'll find it. But it's actually in Rambo 4, where they sort of stick it in the dream sequence. So yeah, it's out there, and again, luckily they didn't, because now we have a whole series to talk about instead of just one film. So and that would have been a downer ending anyway. It's actually, when you see it, you'll be like, oh yeah, that was pretty weak. It doesn't even really work very well. You would think it might be the heightened sense of drama. Nah, not really. It's not very good. So I'm glad they left it the way they left it.
I agree. I feel like it was. I wouldn't say it was a better ending than the novel because the novel went off into a different direction than the movie did. So the ending in the novel, if I remember correctly, kind of felt fitting. That Troutman kind of took him out with Teasel's gun.
Yeah,
then Teasel died shortly after.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to. The film and the novel are they're written. They're done for different purposes. The novel is very much meant to be a tragedy. It is a tragic story about a broken veteran who saw a lot of action. The film is also an adventure story. I mean, it is very much about him surviving in the woods and living off the land and using his training and going up against the cops. I mean, it is a great story, and it's an action story. It is not an action story to the heights of the other films will become, but it is still and I mean, because this one is so grounded, that's why I think it works just so much better. I mean, again, you're to sit here and again, not to fast forward, but to compare this one to the second one, to Rambo 2, it is a very apples to oranges kind of a comparison. In fact, it's almost like trying to compare Rocky 1 to Rocky 4, where, you know what I mean? I remember we talked about that series, and I said Rocky 4, it's, again, I love it, but I love it for much different reasons. And that's kind of how I look at these first two Rambo suits. So yeah, I mean this one it's still very much an adventure story, and it's sort of, again, like I said, it's a different experience than reading the book. So keeping it a little lighter, keeping the film a little lighter than the book is definitely a step in the right direction, I think.
Did you know that there was a Bollywood remake of First Blood?
I thought I saw, is it First Blood or is it Rambo?
It's being filmed right now. Basically, it's done filming. It's supposed to be released next year.
Really?
And yeah, they're doing it Bollywood style, which I guess means there's going to be dance numbers.
I thought I saw something, but this is going back a while already, where they were doing some sort of a Rambo remake. I don't know if it was First Blood or it was supposed to be the second one, because it looks like the second one. But
I don't know, but I got to be honest with you. If it comes out, we're reviewing that.
I will keep an eye on this.
That aside, one other thing I want to point out. I mean, there's a lot to point out in this movie. First of all, the stunt work. That fall off of the mountain, that fall out of the helicopter, is some really good and scary stunt work.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, that's a tribute to the kind of more grounded kind of action in this film, where again it is sort of a little more believable, or maybe that's not even the way to say it. But it just has a much more visceral feel, because you could sort of, first of all, again, it was done real. There's no CGI. There's no blue screens or anything. It is what it is. I mean, a guy jumped off of that mountain. So, I mean, that's some crazy stuff with a helicopter right there, It's
weirdly like, what's the word I'm trying to think of? It almost makes me sad to watch, because I think of all the CGI stunts that are being done today and stuff like that. Sure. And I look back at this, and a part of me is like, a part of me misses that. Another part of me is kind of glad that these crazy guys aren't, jumping out of buildings and stuff like that anymore. But I almost miss that that visceral feeling, and this made me miss that a lot.
Interestingly, by the way, this is also a film where one of the stuntmen got pretty seriously injured, and if you don't know it, you'd never guess when and where it's actually happening.
Oh, where and when is it?
The scene where the car chase is happening, when Rambo first escapes and he's on the motorcycle, and Teasel is chasing him in the police car.
When the car flips over.
No, not even that.
Really?
It's nothing more than a jump off a ramp. There's one part the motorcycle goes up and over a ramp and just lands on the street down a little further, and then the car does the same thing, just jumps a ramp. I mean, you're not even sure. I don't know if he's jumping over train tracks or what it is, but there's a ramp there for some reason. They jump it, just kind of plain old Dukes of Hazzard style. Not even very high. But the car just took off and went sailing a lot further than I think they thought. When the guy lands, he actually broke his back. And I can't remember.
Frack.
Yes, and I don't recall. I don't remember how serious it was, but it was serious. I don't know if he was like a cripple after that or whatever. I'd have to look that up again. But it was a serious injury. And again, something as simple as that, you'd think that'd be the easy one.
God.
Yeah.
I almost hate knowing that now, but yeah, that's just...
Sorry.
That's all right, that's all right. Another thing I want to point out real quick, and I'm going to let you talk for a little while because I've been talking quite a bit. I want to give a shout out to Mr. Jerry Goldsmith's soundtrack.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Thank you for mentioning that, because what a great score. I mean, that's
iconic.
Oh my God, is that good? I mean, I remember I was saying before how this film always feels like autumn to me, like it feels like fall. You know what? On a chilly day when you're taking a little walk, play that music in your CD player. I mean, I'm showing my age, CD player, and your MP3 player, your phone, whatever. But I mean, seriously, you take a little walk in the woods with that playing. Oh, it's just so good.
The little yeah, I can see that. I actually live in the area where they filmed it, the Pacific Northwest, so maybe I should give that a try. Just go walking through the wood. Go walking through the woods, hit some Punjab sticks of some walking, whatever they're called.
Just go hitchhiking into town when you're playing it.
No, the soundtrack is done, and he actually evolves it as the movie's in the second one.
Yes,
and gives it an almost rock style appeal. But we'll get to that when we get to First Blood Part 2. Ironically named movie. We have great performances by Mr. Richard Crenna, which I think also gives an air of gravitas, and honestly is the beginning of the cliche of I am the one that trained him. And I know all of his, he was the beginning of that. Lampooned in the Hot Shot movies. Remember the Hot Shot movies?
Oh, yes. Very much so. I think he's, I don't know if I would say he's the origin of that kind of a character. I mean, it is definitely the mentor character. And he is, remember how we talked about the trailer for the newest Rambo that we're going to review soon, Last Blood? And yes. I kind of said how I really don't like how Stallone does the monologues, because Rambo's not a guy who should be talking about himself. Somebody else should be talking about him in the second person. And Troutman is exactly that vehicle. He's there to talk about Rambo and what he is, what he's capable of, etc. And again, he gives us that kind of the other kind of conflict. He now steps in, and he's now sort of butting heads with Teasel, almost like in a way that Rambo now can't, because he's sort of out of the picture. He's out doing his own thing. So we need to sort of verbalize the conflict, and this is Troutman's role, and he's great at it. And yes, even just doing the intro, at the beginning of the show. I mean, I've done the Troutman imitation I don't know how many times. I love how he plays that. He's a guy like an acting class. You'd watch him, just watch his facial expressions, the head tilts, everything. I mean, every the way he delivers his lines is just so great. And he's so good. And I mean, he's so good that they sort of do it again in Rambo 2, where he's sort of kind of stuck in the same sort of a role, kind of, just kind of battling with the bureaucracy of the situation, as opposed to Rambo fighting on the ground. And he's just great. And he was a last minute. I mean, I don't like to waste a whole lot of time talking about behind the scenes stuff, because I feel like that's better served other places, But he was a last minute replacement. I think it was Kirk Douglas was the one who was going to play that part right up until the last minute, who probably would have been pretty good. But
yeah, he would have worked pretty well.
Yeah, and I think he was, if I remember correctly, he was he was trying to get his hands in the creative process. He wanted his character written differently, et cetera, et cetera. And I think at the last minute, when he didn't get what he wanted, he said, "The hell with it," and they just said, "Okay, who else can we get?" And they got Richard Crenna. And again, I think what a great bit of casting there. He's so good, and again, a smart move on his part because it became a very iconic role. But yeah, I mean, he's just tremendous, and it's one of those things. Like now that once he was in, I can't imagine anybody else playing that part.
100% agreed. Whatever happened to Ted Kotcheff? This is a very well directed movie.
Yeah, it sure is, and I don't. If you asked me years ago, I probably could have mentioned a couple things that he did, but yeah, I couldn't tell you now, like what else he's done.
I mean, he had a string. He did the original Fun with Dick and Jane, which, as an HBO subscriber in the 70s, I must have seen that movie 1,000 times. He did North Dallas 40, which, if you haven't seen that, that's actually a pretty good breakdown of the NFL.
Okay.
All right, it's not a bad movie. Then he did First Blood. He did a movie called Uncommon Valor. I think like the last major movie
that was pretty good, actually. Okay, yes, I do remember that. That was a good movie.
Uncommon Valor was a good movie, but like one of the last, movies he did back to back. He did Weekend at Bernie's, the first one, and Folks with
Roger Moore.
With Roger Moore.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he was a capable guy. He absolutely was. I mean, not a household name.
Time out. Gotta take it back. I deep dived into it. Not the Folks with Roger Moore, which was a pretty cool movie. This was a comedy movie with Tom Selleck.
Oh, okay.
And his folks were Don Amici and
Gotcha.
And Jackson. Yeah, no, sorry, my apology. Completely different movie. Completely different movie. If you see it on the shelf, it's the one with Roger Moore you want to watch. That was a pretty good one.
Yeah. Yes, very true. But again, still, he was a very capable director. I think again, the Uncommon Valor is the one, like, of the list that you just sort of rattled off. I mean, that's the one to me where I kind of went, oh, yes, that's a good... Like, he knows how to keep his stories kind of grounded and kind of existing in the real world. So it does not get sort of carried away. Again, the next ones, as good as they may be, they're very cartoony. This is not. I mean, this happens in the real world, and that's why it's very easy to get caught up in what's happening.
Easily, it's one of the things that appealed to me about it. It was like when we were talking about watching Batman Begins again. We almost take for granted what the origin was because of what it eventually became, and good, bad, or indifferent. Considering the way my side of the reviews went. It still was this is an extremely solid, quote unquote, Batman Begins, so to speak. Rambo Begins, if you want to say it that way. But this was a solid outing, a great introduction to the character. He was still human. I thought that the scene where he had to sew up his arms is still one of the most cringe moments. Like, not cringe in a bad way, cringe like as I'm like grabbing my arm in sympathy pains as he's sewing himself up. Just that type is what I mean.
Big time, yes. That was a pretty badass scene in that movie. I still to this day remember that.
I want to give a shout out to Michael Westmore. He was the makeup effects artist for that movie, because I was watching that scene, and first of all, that's actually Stallone's arm that he's, quote unquote, pretend sewing into. Yeah. And what I loved was, as he's trying to sew it up, like with the heartbeat, it would like a little bit of blood, little bit of blood, little bit of blood as he's sewing it up. That's and it looked flawless. Even today, that is some of the best visual makeup effects I've seen.
Totally, yes. Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm totally with you. I like I said, I remember that scene, and oh boy, that sticks with you.
Yeah, it will stick with you. It's definitely one of the... All right, so that leads us to that leads us. Let's see. We've done the acting. We've done the screenplay. The screenplay, which was written by committee. The fact that it was a 3-hour movie originally. I don't know. What else? What else you got to say about it?
Well, first of all, we should. If we're talking about the cast, and if you're just spotting people in the background, a young David Caruso is in this before his. What was that show he was famous for?
NYPD Blue, and then later on CSI Miami.
There you go. Listen again. It's so hard when we kind of review these films that end up just sort of being gush fests, because I mean, again, it's not a film. I'm not going to put it up with a couple just super duper classic. I mean, it's not Citizen Kane, but again, for what it's setting out to do, it does it incredibly effectively. I find it to be almost sort of the perfect blend of human drama plus actual kind of adventure and I mean it is a survival story, and it's sort of the classic. I find it to be so incredibly well written. Like, the screenplay is phenomenal, and this is the kind of story you could bring this script into screenwriting 101 and discuss, and just say that this is a classic man versus story. One man versus this team, this situation, but there's sort of a bigger theme playing behind the scenes, and and this is the way it all ties in together at the end. It's the whole thing is just a perfect kind of survivalist sort of a story. And again, once it kind of comes back to a total face-off between him and the guy who started the whole thing, it just is just incredible. And like I said, I never get tired of watching it. I feel like there's one or two little minor things that I wish, a couple little minor things. In fact, we might as well talk about if there's anything, little dings in the armor, we might as well talk about that. But I got one or two that kind of stay with me, and we could talk about that, I suppose.
We could, or you could save it for your Who Asked You if they're part of your Who Asked You.
This is true. Yeah, I guess I will.
Yeah. No, I'm quite satisfied. It's a short movie, but it's an effective movie, and I kind of feel like if we keep going with the gush fest, it's going to make our scores seem almost evident, even though they're really not. So why don't we do it? Why don't we go right to scores?
John Rambo was just passing through town, but they had nothing better to do.
You're looking for trouble. You came to the right place, buddy.
They didn't know how far he would go. They knew he was innocent.
Just another drifter that broke the law. Vagrancy, wasn't it?
They didn't know he had been trained for survival.
We're right on top of him. Keep moving. There's no way out of here except through us.
They didn't know he could stalk a soldier by his heartbeat.
You don't seem to want to accept the fact that you're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare.
They didn't know they had started a war that they could never win. Sylvester Stallone in First Blood.
So yeah, like I said, it's the kind of story I really can't find flaw in the story, in the screenplay, the action, the level of action. There's not much about it that I would really have any kind of criticism about. I think it's perfectly well done. With some minor exceptions here and there, I think it's an absolutely phenomenal film. I'm going to give it a 9. And again, that's high praises. Like I said, it's you got Citizen Kane, you got Goodfellas, you got The Godfather, you got some masterful films, and then you got things that are just a little lower stakes, but do not. It's not because it's struggling to achieve its goals. It does. It's just a smaller scale film, but a fabulous adventure story. And again, it's the kind of thing that gets your heart pumping. It's you're rooting for this character. You're rooting for him the whole time, and you're rooting for him to persevere. And that's sometimes those are the best stories. So there you go. There's my 9.
So one of my favorite shows on YouTube used to be every frame a picture. And as I was watching this movie, I was kind of shocked at the amazing cinematography throughout. And as an example of every frame a picture, you could literally freeze frame just about any scene in this movie, and it is so beautifully composed and perfectly encompassing of the scene. No matter what, even if it's him just, firing the M60 or anything like that, it's just, every shot just looks so well poised and staged. And that's just one superlative I can give this movie. You've got solid acting across the board from everyone, including people that, you would never think from. And a great story, a compelling story, with sympathetic characters across the board, nearly, save for one thing. I love this movie. I enjoyed the hell out of rewatching it. I also gave it a 9. I was bordering on a 10. I was actually bordering on a 10 with this movie. I was flip-flopping as the conversation was going. But I'm very happy with the 9. I really enjoyed watching this movie, and I look forward to the rest of them, even though I know that this particular character of John Rambo is about to evolve into Superman. I'm okay with that, but we'll get to that.
Exactly. Alrighty. Well, I like it. We're on the same page. So who's going to go first with our criticism?
Who asked you?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to let you go first because you seem to have a couple you wanted to get off your chest.
and it's not a lot. It really is not a lot. If there's one thing I kind of wish I could go back and tweak a little bit, I do find that when you watch it, it does kind of look aged a little bit. Like I'm not sure how they filmed it. Sometimes I look at it and it looks great. Sometimes not so much. In fact, I should probably also clarify. This is a movie that, like a lot of movies when we were younger, I taped off the TV on the VCR, watched ad nauseum, and to this day, I literally can watch it now and I will still go, oh yeah, that's from the theatrical cut. The curses are in it, because I saw it just so many times off that stupid VCR tape. But yeah, I mean it, and it's visually it's pretty good. Probably could have been a little clearer, a little more colorful, etc. But and then the sound effects. There's some sound effects that I just kind of go, oh yeah, that just sounds kind of stock. Like it doesn't really have a lot of punch, but it's okay. But it's a very, very minor criticism. The other one that I will say, Stallone gets a lot of flack for some of the monologues in this film. I wouldn't say he's mumbling the way a lot of people will, and they'll sort of goof on certain things. But I do recognize there are parts where it's not perfect. And I remember the scene where it's right after Galt got killed, he fell out of the helicopter. And then they see him down in the ravine, and he's got his hands up. And he says, there's one man dead, it's not my fault, I don't want any more hurt. And I kind of remember thinking, like, why does he say, I don't want any more hurt? Like why is he talking like he's, like, I get that he's yelling, and he's trying to be quick and concise. I don't want to see anyone else get hurt. How about that? Make a full sentence. I mean, if you're gonna invite criticisms when you just say, I don't want any more hurt. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why he's talking like a cave person at that point, but so that's my only kind of thing. I would if I could go back and tweak. That's it.
So that is a good one, and I will grant you that. I did kind of find sometimes his dialogue to be a little almost too caveman-y, which may have been the point. Hard to say. For me, honestly, it's the Galt character. I kind of feel like there's a reason this guy got unhinged and started taking pot shots at the Rambo character when he was basically in a complete surrender position. Okay? It turned him into, oh, this guy's just an asshole, into Snidely Whiplash. Tie the girl to the railroad track. And I feel like, I know that they originally said the original cut was like 3 hours long or something like that. And I kind of feel like there's a characterization of this guy missing that would have kind of explained his over-the-top reaction to Rambo. Or at least I would have, if I had had the chance, I would have done something like that. Granted, this is the 80s. Back in the 80s, you didn't really need to justify your heavy, which I guess the Galt character represents. It's like if Rambo is James Bond and Brian Dennehy's Teasel character is like the Bond villain, then the Galt character was kind of, the bodyguard or the heavy or something like that. You know what I'm saying? The Odd Job, exactly. No rhyme, no reason. But with every other bit of layer that they had in this movie and the depth that they had of the characterization, I would have liked a little bit more put on Galt to make his, just straight up wanting to murder Rambo make more sense. Just a personal opinion.
I think that's fair. I mean, I would probably... It didn't bother me as much as it bothered you because I feel like... In fact, I think we've sort of said before, like, sometimes an asshole is just an asshole.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like they, to at least some extent, kind of gave him a little bit... you could sort of see where he was coming from, and he was a complete jerk, and then once Rambo kicked his ass, then the guy just kind of really went unhinged. But yeah, that's totally fair. I get you there.
And how about for your consideration, sir?
I have a hunch I'm going to be stealing this from you, my friend, but I kind of have to. And I will say that I think the whole movie is absolutely incredible, so it's oftentimes hard to just find one or two things, that you think are really superlative. And, I will say, and this is not it, but I will just say one of the things that I sort of really admire about the film is, for example, after the Weekend Warriors blow up the cave, and he has to kind of go exploring, and I like that the film sort of takes its time, because that, again, I love that you're letting him show how he knows how to do things, and it's a scene that requires a little patience, and I sort of feel like a lot of the action films that would follow would never have done something like that. So there's, again, a lot of good moments like that I think are just terrific. But the thing that I think really does sort of transcend this film is the score. That score is so good, and it really did elevate this film to a level even greater than it was. So I really have to give it to Jerry Goldsmith on the score.
Yeah, you did kind of steal it. I actually had two things in my Who Asked You. You've already mentioned the one that I agree with. Absolutely, Jerry Goldsmith's soundtrack is spot on. First of all, Goldsmith very rarely misses.
Sure, absolutely.
You can go through his entire career. He very rarely misses. That guy was on point more times than he ever was. And this is just another example of him just being outstanding. So that is my actual for your consideration. I just wanted to add one thing. We didn't talk about it, but I wanted to add this in. I really liked the breakout scene.
Oh, yes.
And
absolutely.
The reason why I liked it is because the entire thing was choreographed in a way, because, here he is in a police station. He is surrounded by armed policemen. And yet, the way that they did the setup, like when they go down to the prison, what's the first thing they do? Well, they take the guns from the guys so the people won't take the gun to overpower them with.
Yeah.
So right away, they're already out of handicap. And when he starts losing it, every single step that he took to get out was logical. It made sense. It was in character. Stallone did like 80% of the stunts for that when he was knocking people around and stuff like that. That added to it. It was seriously the most realistic breakout I've seen, and not a single, maybe a tiny moment of Deus Ex Machina when the guy was like, what's going on downstairs, and unlocks the door, and Rambo's just on the other side of it. But that was like slight, and even that I didn't even think much of until after. It is seriously an extremely excellently choreographed breakout, something you don't see done very well. Breakouts, 9 times out of 10, rely on, okay, they're busy over there, quick, we'll just sneak out here. But no, this was beautifully visceral. It truly demonstrated the power of Rambo and how deadly he was, even without a gun.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, it's a great scene in the film, and it's, again, so very smartly done, where, again, things have been kind of quiet for a while, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a big explosive action scene, and it's just great. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, it is a small town little police station. So I mean, I didn't find it to be. I mean, again, later on, he's going to break out of a whole flipping POW camp with hundreds of people chasing him. But at this point, we're still very grounded. So I found it to be very believable. And yeah, all those little points that you made are very valid. So I'm with you there.
I thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Oh my God, are we done talking about this movie already? I feel like I really feel like we kind of gave this a passing just glance because it is just so damn good. But again, the gushing ones are the tricky ones.
It's difficult because it's a very quick movie, and there's a lot. You literally, because there's a lot of silence in the movie, where the movie relies on visual storytelling, which that makes my penis hard right away. So that's like my thing. Yeah. I kind of feel like that if I start going into that, I'm almost taking away from the audience the opportunity to discover it. So I want to make sure you understand, yes, this is a visually compelling movie, an excellent movie, well done, not only slightly a product of its time in the 80s in the respect of the stereotypical cops, and certainly, Rambo's hairstyle. How the hell the mullet was a big thing back in the 80s, I still haven't figured out. It's funny you say that, because honestly, I really feel like, and this is going to, I don't know, it's going to sound a little silly on my part, but I mean, he looks great. I mean, Stallone looks phenomenal. I mean, he's probably the best he's ever looked. I mean, I kind of feel like, after this, he kind of gets like way too built and way too, just huge. But I mean, here he was just like, I don't know, it's like the best shape I think he was. This is like the Rocky III era, and just nailed it really. Yeah, he wasn't overdoing it. His body was proportionally well done.
Exactly. Yes, very proportional. Yeah.
Well, that ends First Blood, but the series goes on, ladies and gentlemen, because next week, Joe and I are going to get our hands on the weirdly titled Rambo, First Blood Part 2.
I think this whole franchise will get the award for the strangest titles as far as trying to keep them organized in your head.
Definitely agree with that. I understand why they titled it the way that they did, to make the audiences aware, but still, man, it is an awkward title.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, we will discuss it.
Well, thank you, sir, for doing the show on your vacation. And
anytime.
Had a great time doing it. Now go back to your vacation and let's do this next week.
Absolutely. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode, and be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube for spoiler-free reviews of new releases. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider becoming a Patreon. You can find our page on patreon.com/reviewswithoutremorse, one word. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are for commentary and critique and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.
I can't get it out of my head, Colonel. The things they did to me over there.
Tell us what we want to know!
Rambo, John, 936.
Always with the mumbling. You sounded like this!
Rambo, John, 936. Oh no, not again, please!
And now back to Whitney.
Sex joke, toilet seat, wacky neighbor!
No more!
Your hair's so thick and pretty, even in this humid jungle atmosphere. What kind of product do you use?
Rambo, John, 93601.
We have ways of making you talk.
Twilight by Stephanie Meyer.
You wouldn't dare.
I never thought I'd f*** a vampire.
You try to swallow his own tongue? Stop it! You've been a prisoner for weeks, but you're still ripped as hell. You focus on core? What's your routine?
I won't tell you anything.
You'll tell us what we want to know, or you'll play E.T. the video game!
No, no! No! No, no! Not again!
Stop him! He's trying to remove his own eyes with the joystick! You must forgive my friend for being so harsh, Mr. Rambo. To make you feel more at home, we washed your beloved bandana. We know it's a sum total that separates your character from Rocky. Now please, enjoy the food and music.
You got a rickrolled American swine! Will you talk?
No, not Mom and Chance. Don't make me watch this. Geneva Convention!
Your beard so finely manicured. You must have sculpting tools.
Stop it!
Where are your sculpting tools?
Oh, please tell me they're not pooping in that cup. Oh, God, they are! Rambo, John, 936...
Okay, look, Rambo, we out of ideas here. Please, just tell us what we want to know.
Did somebody finally learn the word please? That's all you had to say. Our troop locations are my microfilm sewn into my scrotum. I'll drive. You guys got any good 8-tracks?
You bet your bandana we got good 8-tracks.
You gave them our troop positions? We lost the war! Did they have Zeppelin 4?
Yeah, that is a stone groove.
That is a stone groove.